Alright, it's always a pleasure to be back on your favorite weekend program, Disability Inclusion, on the network service of Radio Nigeria. Inakwana Inagejia Ekaro Otutuoma. Wherever you're listening to us from any part of the nation, you're welcome to the program Disability Inclusion. Well, in case it's your first time tuning in, Disability Inclusion radio program is your weekly spotlight program that talks about everything that has to do with persons with disabilities. So we like to highlight the challenges they face, the opportunities they ought to enjoy, and of course, our individual responsibilities in making sure that disability inclusion is truly practiced and implemented in our society today. Well, in case you don't know, my name is Jennifer Ogor, your radio host on today's program. You're very welcome. So on today's edition, we are going to give you quite an informative and educative and enlightening edition. So we're going to be talking about closing the gaps in electoral access for voters with disabilities, and we have very prominent guests in our studio today. They are going to be giving us information on how to close the gap as it concerns electoral access to voters for voters with disabilities. Now, I'll be calling out their names shortly. I'll be introducing them shortly. But as usual, we like to give you information and, of course, messages on what to know about the Committee of Persons with Disabilities, the agenda, and what they've been doing so far. So stay with us as we come up with our news tidbits.
Here is the news tidbit. I am the Abuja to host 13th West Africa Deaf Football Championship. In commemoration of the 50th anniversary of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, West Africa Deaf Sports Union, WATSU, will be hosting the 13th edition of the West Africa Deaf Football Championship and the 3rd West Africa Deaf Athletic Championship. The championship is scheduled from the 18th to the 31st of August 2025 at the MKO Abiola National Stadium, Abuja. The event will involve 12 African countries: Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire,
my friend,
Bissau,
connect
Ghana,
me now.
Niger,
Do something. I want to check something
Burkina
quickly.
Faso, Sierra Leone,
You're actually streaming on
Senegal,
Facebook.
Nigeria,
Okay, you're ready.
I know. I used to see.
The
I used to
championship will
watch it.
feature mixed relays of 100, 200, 400, 800 meters, 4 by 100 relay, 4 by 400 among other events. The championship will feature mixed relays of 100, 200, 400, 800 meters, 4 by 100 relay, 4 by 400 among other events. The president of WASU, Amuda Yusuf Ibrahim, noted that events would create a platform to select many qualified athletes, players, and country teams to compete at the global stage competitions such as deaf, also some of them to get into the faces of the vulnerable, describing the PWDs as the most vulnerable. He also enjoined the new committee in every local government not to pay lip service to persons with disabilities at the mainstream of governance, but rather to consider them for political appointments. And that's the news tidbit. I am
Age. Whether you are an advocate, a policymaker, or just curious to learn more, Mike Ability is your platform for awareness, advocacy, and inclusion. Subscribe now to Mike Ability on all our major podcast platforms and follow us on social media for updates. Join the movement towards a society where everyone belongs. Because disability is not inability, it's strength, resilience, and limitless potential. Mike Ability, amplifying voices, empowering change.
You're still on to the program Disability Inclusion on the network service of Radio Nigeria. Today, our topic is closing the gaps in electoral access for voters with disabilities. Despite, the clear provision of Section 54 and Section 54, Subsection 1 and 2 of the Electoral Act 2022, which mandates the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) to ensure accessible voting for persons with disabilities, including assistive communication support systems and inclusive voting procedures. Implementation has been partial and inconsistent. Now, while tools like Braille ballot guides, magnifying glasses, and Form EC30 PWD have been introduced, many other disability clusters remain underserved. Now, with upcoming elections in the horizon, this gap not only violates the rights of voters with disabilities, but also risk deepening voter apathy and disenfranchisement within the community. Now, this edition of Disability Inclusion Radio Program focuses on closing the gap in electoral access for voters with disabilities. Like I said, a timely conversation, that brings together leaders in the disability community to, assess what has been done, what still needs to be done.
Like a year now.
Yes, and he's a friend, and of course he's here to entertain your questions as regards the topic of discussion for today. We're still expecting another guest. Hopefully we'll be joined by Dr. Chike Okogwu, the founder of Center for Ability Rehabilitation and Empowerment in Nigeria. But like you've heard the introduction, what can be done to close the gap in electoral access for voters with disabilities? So we'll just move right, into the discussion. Can you briefly walk us through what Section 54?
Now, persons with disabilities can actually enjoy a certain level of access when it comes to elections, and it requires priority voting for persons with disabilities. It requires INEC making other provisions for persons with disabilities when it comes to elections. The issue of polling booth being accessible for persons with disabilities, the voting cubicles, making them accessible for persons with disabilities, the things that section actually clearly stated. So that's also talk about communication gaps, like the deaf persons when it comes to polling units, you see some posters that will be pasted that will make it easy for a deaf person to actually identify that is possible, that don't need to ask so much questions for him or for the person to be able to know what is expected of that person at the polling unit. So these are some of the things. And again, they also talk about providing sign language interpreters when it's possible for persons with deaf persons, and also magnify glasses for those people with low vision, like persons with albinism, so that they will be able to also vote independently. So these are some of the things that section actually talks about.
Okay, you can participate, in the conversation by calling any of these numbers: 0808-281-4453 or 0915-091-0482. I take these numbers again: 0808-281-4453 or 0915-091-0483. We are talking about closing the gaps in electoral access for voters with disabilities. Now, as regards the topic, to what extent has INEC, implemented this section now during the elections? Are there any notable gaps, you've observed?
Yes, and the gaps is actually from mostly the ad hoc staff.
Okay.
Not being aware. I don't know whether, because I know that INEC actually conducted some training for them before the elections, and it includes training on disability inclusion for them to know that when they see anybody with disability, that person should be accorded that right for him to vote first. But when we go to the polling units, you don't see that happening. And I won't say everywhere, but in some places you can actually find that sometimes some ad hoc staff will not really understand that persons with disabilities need to vote first. And I can actually attribute that to a lot of reasons. Sometimes because of the fact that maybe some logistic issues, they may not be able to start early. And when that happens, because of rush, they may not accord persons with disabilities that right to vote first. And again, sometimes they may have some of this material like the Braille ballot guide, the magnified glasses. We have seen a situation that persons with disabilities, especially persons with albinism or blind persons, complain that they are in their polling units, they couldn't find some of these materials that INEC have actually promised us that they are going to be providing. They couldn't find them, and because of that, they couldn't really make use of such things to vote. And the one I actually observed very well in the last election is the placement of the ballot boxes in many of the. I think it's just because that they don't really know where to actually deploy some of those materials. It's also one of the issues that we also find out. So not identifying where persons with disabilities, those who actually need those materials,
and what they are even for.
Where they are even for, because some of them, at times they find them in their buses, but they don't even know that this is Braille ballot guide and it's for blind persons.
So how do we address that challenge?
I think one of the ways is for us to continue doing what we are doing, continue to create awareness, and again, it's not enough for you to just deploy people to go to the field. You need to also do some follow-up to find out that are they doing the right thing. Let it be part of the things that the questions that you put out for people. It's one of the feedbacks that most of the election monitors, those who go around to actually monitor election, be part of the criteria, part of the things that they will be looking at. So they give their report based on that the component of disability is not being observed. So when that happens, that all the CSOs will be part of their work. And also, I know that INEC, when they deploy, they also have their supervisors in the field. Let their supervisors also make sure that that is part of the things that they also look at. Where is your those materials? Can you identify them, bring them out?
What are they for?
What are they for? They should know. So that's the major thing. One of the forums that actually complained, one of INEC staff told me that when they are doing these trainings, most of the ad hoc staff will be busy pressing their phones. So at the end of the day, they are not really getting the real gist. And when they go to the field, they do whatever they like. So that's also another problem. So they should try as much as they can that when people find themselves doing the job and they don't do it properly, they can also be penalty to that.
Yes, of course. All right, you can join the conversation, and we would like to, assess your knowledge about disability inclusion. This program has been going on for quite some time now, and I think you should be aware of what disability inclusion is all about, what we are trying to achieve, where we are at now and where we hope to be, in the future. Kindly call any of these numbers: 0808-281-4453 or 0915-091-0483. We are also streaming on Facebook at TAF Africa, and I specifically want to put out this question to you out there as regards the topic of discussion for today. Would you grant access to a PWD, a person with disability, to vote before you during an election? I know sometimes when probably we queue for fuel or we're trying to make a purchase in the supermarket, at a counter, and someone just walks up to you and wants to probably purchase that item before you or get a fill before you, you're like, no, it's human to, have that kind of impulsive thought. But as regards the topic of discussion for today, would you grant access to a person with disability? Probably you see a person that is visually impaired or a person that is physically challenged during an election. Would you actually grant him access to vote before you? Now, granting them access to vote before you, there are two perspectives to it. Is it as a right or because of pity? And I'm telling you right now that it shouldn't be because of pity. It should be as a right. Do you actually know that? Let us know. Call any of these numbers: 0808-281-4453 or 0915-091-0483, or join us live on Facebook at TAF Africa. Would you grant access to a person with disability to vote before you during an election? It's still disability inclusion on the network service of Radio Nigeria. And we have Dr. Chris Agbo as our guest for today's program. He's the FCT chairman, the National Association of Persons with Physical Disabilities. Now, like you've mentioned, INEC has some assistive tools like the magnifying glasses, the Braille ballot guide, and Form EC30PWD. In your view, which disability cluster, are being consistently left out, and what impact does these have on voter turnout among these groups?
I think the group that I would say, because based on our findings and based on what we've been seeing in the field, is the deaf cluster.
All right.
Yeah, the deaf cluster, because of their disability cannot be seen. Sometimes they don't even enjoy priority when it comes to voting, because people don't even know that they are persons with disabilities.
Okay.
And also persons with albinism. People still argue up to today, persons with albinism, are they also persons with disabilities? So when you find them at the queues, without knowing that a person with albinism, when there is sun and the person is standing under the sun, it poses threat to that person. So they don't consider that. But most times they look at them as those who are not persons with disabilities. And because of this reason, they don't enjoy that priority in queues. And again, like the deaf persons, most times, most of these adult staffs will not even remember to post some of these sign language, the posters that need to actually direct them.
Yeah.
And there's no sign language interpreters on ground to actually help them to communicate. It becomes a problem. And remember, it's not all of them that is actually educated. So what of those who cannot actually read? How would they communicate? So that communication gap will always be there. So I think they are one of the group that we need to do something. And one of the ways to actually create that access for them is to begin to employ sign language interpreters in our polling units. So when we do that, to make it easier for deaf people to vote independently. But if not, they will continue to face what they are facing today, because they can't actually communicate. And when they cannot communicate, now they will tag them as they are very stubborn person. I've been talking to him or her, he's not listening, without even knowing that the person cannot even hear you.
But in that situation now, what can be done? Because like you said, if you see a person that is deaf, or a person with auditory impairment, it might be difficult to identify that person as a person with disability. So as an INEC staff during an election, how would you suggest they handle such a scenario?
First of all, like the awareness we are creating, they should also know that it's not everybody you see that can actually hear you. Some persons are deaf persons. So when you try to communicate with somebody and the person is not responding, you should know that it's a deaf person. So, and one of the ways, what you need to do, or INEC need to do, is to make sure that can we now begin to see that even if we will have sign language interpreters in the polling units, or those adult staff having some level of sign language, inculcated in their training, then they will also have, at least even if it's the primary aspect of sign language interpretation, that they can actually communicate with.
What's the percentage of sign language interpreters in Nigeria today?
I wouldn't know that, but I think they can train more. Training more persons will help, because 2 days ago, Civil Defense trained some of their staff, their frontline staff, on sign language. They collaborated with some organizations and they train some of their staff. So INEC can do the same. Having a lot of INEC staff to learn sign language. And it can be, by doing that, it will help them to also inculcate that to most of their adult staff. And once they do that, it will go a long way to help. Even if you say you don't have money to employ that much of sign language interpreters. But I know for sure that when you go to INEC now, you can actually see sign language interpreters employed as INEC staff. So let's start from there.
Is it possible to have a sign language interpreter at every polling unit or major polling units that persons with disabilities?
That's why I'm saying now that if you cannot employ have enough sign language interpreter to go around all the polling units, then we can begin to train some adults that, at least to have that elementary knowledge about sign language.
Yes, yes.
At least even if it's the one that they can help them to act, you know the normal thing that you say at the polling unit.
Yeah.
At least learn them on signs also, so that you can actually communicate with sign language interpreter. It can go alongside with the training that they are going through before the election.
Okay.
So bring that component into their training. I think it will go a long way to solve the problem.
Right. Thank you so much. Still disability inclusion on network service of Radio Nigeria. We'll go on a quick break now. But before then, just a reminder that we are focusing on closing the gaps in electoral access for voters with disabilities. Have there been, challenges while trying to vote during an election as a person with disability? Kindly let us know on the numbers 0808-281-4453 or 0915-091-0483. In case you're trying to reach us on those numbers and you're having perhaps network hitches. We are streaming on Facebook at Half Africa. You can watch us virtually and drop your comments, and we'll definitely identify, with you, and then read out your messages on the program. It's still disability inclusion on the network service of Radio Nigeria. Do stay with us.
Radio Nigeria, uplifting the people and uniting the nation.
Is network strong?
Is that? Can't even open what I want.
Show me love, no go show me python. We be the same for all who are kingdom. So me say, celebrate me. Now when I day alive, appreciate me. Now when I day alive, don't be say when I live this life, you would have fake come for my wife. Celebrate me. Now when I day alive, appreciate me. Now when I day alive, don't be say when I live this life, you would have fake come for my bar. Element for me, you be big name. If I OD, you be big name. I want to share, you be big name. My brother young thought you be big name. What am I happy doing? Big name. First in Sagila, big name. Ejelewan, you be big name. Obi Kubana, you be big name. Actor Eze, you be big name. Ben Peters, you be big name. Tom Polo, you be big name. Ochacho, Ebelebe, you be big name. Okonjo, Iweala, you be big name. Larry Gaga, one name, you be big name. Oluwa, make me a big name. They can put all my enemies in big shame. So me say, celebrate me. Now when I day alive, appreciate me. Now when I day alive, don't be say when I live this life, you would have feel come for my
Radio Nigeria, uplifting the people and uniting the nation.
Yeah, that beautiful track there with a very deep message. And while listening to that song, Celebrate Me by Pato Rankin, and I was just thinking about life and, the true meaning of life and what we can get out of it sometimes. And true happiness, of course, not everybody can be completely happy in life except you choose to make yourself happy. And one of such ways, we can actually be truly happy and feel contented, in some areas of our lives is when we give accolades and we, celebrate each other. So we are happy to be here and we want to celebrate you. And the only way we can do that is if you definitely call us on 0808-281-4453 or 0915-091-0483. So as a person with disability, we would like to celebrate you. We would like to make you truly part of the program. This program is for you. and you wear the shoe, you know where it pinches. So if you don't bring your complaints, if you don't bring your plight, if you don't bring some of the challenges you encounter in the society, how do we hope to have the discussion and probably prefer a solution that will work for you? So kindly call us or join us live on Facebook at TAF Africa. Today's edition is Closing the Gap in Electoral Access for Voters with Disabilities. And so far we've been joined by Mr. Chris Agbo, the FCT chairman of National Association of Persons with Disabilities. And our second guest just walked into the studio. Good morning, sir. Looking all bright, and it's good to have you, Dr. Chike. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Nigeria. She said I just walked in. I actually just rolled in.
Well,
I pray to walk one day.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. It's good to have you. And if you're listening to us out there, you have questions you need to, get answered, kindly call us on 0808-281-4453. We're talking about closing the gaps in electoral access for voters with disabilities. Before we went on that break, I was asking you the question: would you grant access now to a person with disability to vote before you during an election? Like, truly. And are you granting that access because you pity that person with disability, or you are granting that access because it's his or her rights? Kindly let us know. So good to have you, sir, on the program. I'm really curious to hear from you, and I'm going to ask you my next question straight away as regards closing the gaps in electoral access for voters with disabilities. Now, INEC, we have assistive devices for persons with disabilities during an election. How realistic is the provision of Section 54, Subsection 2 of the Electoral Act, which addresses the provision of suitable communication means such as, sign language interpretation, electronic devices, including, braille ballot guide and off-site voting? How realistic are these provisions in Section 54, in Nigeria current electoral context, and what steps must INEC take to make them realistic?
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, good morning, Nigeria, again.
Yeah.
There are two things here. The first one is what you said about asking the question. Anybody that does not give us priority during voting I will make 500. All persons with disabilities is there in the Act. Anybody that discriminates against you and does not give you priority voting on a queue owes you 500,000 naira. It's there in the Act. You is it 500 or 100,000? I think it's 100,000 naira.
100.
If you do not make me come before you on a queue, and that PWD earns 500,000, I just go to court. The court will give you 100,000. So it's actually a law.
Okay.
Well, I mean, let's put it succinctly.
Yeah.
It's actually a law. It is our right. It is a right, and I repeat, it's a right. So there's people calling in to say whether they will do it or not are infringing upon our rights. It is an act of law. Ignorance is not an excuse in the law. The other question, I like to say this all the time, that much as we're not where we want to be, we're not where we used to be. INEC is doing a great job. The challenge with INEC and provision, wherever they know that this PWDs are going to vote or be, participate in the electoral process, they make provisions for it. Where the gap is that during registration, the first time we all registered, I think it was 2011, there was no request or provision for disabilities. And it's a continuous voter registration.
Yeah.
It was during when I changed my polling units, when I changed my processes at the last elections, that it was captured that I was a PWD. So I was put in a place where it was easy. They provided a ramp across the gutter for me to be able to cross over to. So yes, INEC does their own part of the work if they know. But when you see the number of registrants for the last election, the number of PWDs captured was abysmally low, far from the realities. So what we need to do now is to plead with INEC that as they start the new processes in August, if they should do a lot of sensitization to let persons with disabilities know, and it should be captured properly in their own registration processes.
Yeah.
That way, it will give them time to start planning. So, indeed, yes, INEC they do a good job in providing the materials for us when we want to vote. The challenge is that they don't also know, that we will be in such places because many of us were not properly captured during registration.
Okay. So beyond INEC, what role should political parties, including CSOs, even communities, play in supporting a disability inclusive election?
I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about what is going on in any political party that I know. Will it sound like I'm campaigning for the political
Well,
party?
as long as our mantra in this station is uplifting the people and uniting the nation. If it's going to uplift and unite, definitely.
Yes, in the ADC, I'm aware. We just did an audit of political parties, and there's what they call GROW in ADC, and you can see the poster here.
Okay.
You will see that G stands for Go Register. R stands for Reach and Recruit. Okay. O stands for Organize Locally, and you can see that PWDs are captured in this. And then Win Convert. So this is their grow mantra in the ADC. Why are we saying this is, at this point, it was from the last audit that we did. Chris was part of when we unveiled the audit. A lot of political parties, we found them, they did not even know that there was a Disability Act. It was from that process, and then thankfully, TAF, at the unveiling at the unveiling day before yesterday, they too had reached out to some political parties. And what we found out was that culturally, the political parties were not against PWDs participating in the electoral process. Rather, according to Chris, they use us as objects of is it, what do you call them?
Seriously.
Yes.
Seriously.
They will put you in front. There is no campaign or anything that they do that you will see a PWD interpreter there. It shows you that they want to do something. But at what level are they engaging us? Is it by way of rights or empathy or use and dump?
So that they will appear as if
they have compassion. But thankfully, we are now more aware. Chris and I have been advocating, and many of us, in the TAF too, the job of telling the world that we need to be seen and participate is not in the political parties. It is in us PWDs coming out to join the political parties. You'll be aware that I participate at the high level of a political party. So when they have the meeting upstairs and I can't go there, guess what? Meeting comes down.
Wow.
You have to insist.
So what I try to tell PWDs is, we talked about it before in one of our programs. Capacity of the PWDs. There's this mindset among some PWDs that the politicians are, in quotes, big men. So they see themselves already as ants. Or is it grasshoppers that we call them now? How does it, they don't see themselves as giants. So sitting down or participating in the electoral process, in the political parties, they are so intimidated that they think that hanging out with the big boys is a big thing. Whereas it is not. It's your right. So I plead with the PWDs to come out en masse and join any political party of their choice. They should go out there, join any political party, because it starts from there. Most times, these political parties too want us. But because we're not there to fill in the positions and gaps, they don't know what to do with them. Yeah. During campaigns, they know that we exist, but we're not members of their party. So you are an object of charity. Yeah. But the moment you participate, And if that party is not even making adequate provisions for you to participate, you can call them out. The National Commission for Persons with Disabilities actually has a regulation. They have a gazetted regulation framework for accessibility, and it's captured there. These are, but again, awareness. People do not know.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank God for TAF, the European Union, and Radio Nigeria for this wonderful awareness creating program.
Thank you.
It's an ongoing process.
Thank you so much, sir. You actually mentioned something that that drew my attention, which is the mentality now of the feeling that you are not important, having low self-esteem. And something gave birth to that attitude, having low self-esteem, which is stigma, discrimination.
Sure.
So as a person with disability who is unable to even access a polling unit, you are coming to vote and you are seeing other people who aren't, physically challenged, for instance, accessing that polling unit, and you're unable to, that sends a message of I'm not wanted here or I'm not relevant. What as a person with disability, what should I do if I've been discriminated upon or if I've been stigmatized in one way or another?
Now there is a law. So the first thing to do is, if you've been stigmatized, get a lawyer to help you interpret the law. Don't take the laws into your hands. Until we begin to test the law. There are lawyers with Association of Lawyers with Disabilities. They're all over the country. If a person with disability has been discriminated against, go on the platform, post it. Reach out to Chris, reach out to anybody. Once you post it on our various platforms, it goes viral. And then our lawyers take it up pro bono.
Okay.
And then they will test the law, and then you use the law to correct that infraction.
Okay. Mr. Chris, what specific actions now is the disability community demanding from INEC between now and the next election, to close these accessibility gaps?
Like what we continue to say is that we continue to tell INEC that they need to continue to train and retrain their staff, especially the ad hoc staff. Just like what Dr. Chike pointed out. Yes, the INEC have made a lot of promises even before the Electoral Act 2022 came on board. Persons with disabilities, organizations of persons with disabilities, and they have been doing one thing or the other. But the law actually made it a right now. And what I want to say is that they need to continue to train and retrain their staff. And again, the awareness creation is also another thing, because that awareness, especially towards the elections, let it form part of their jingles, letting people know that persons with disabilities will also be at the polling units, and these are their rights at the polling units. Because most times the adult staff are overwhelmed by the crowd of people, a lot of people demanding one thing or the other, and at the end of the day, what is due for persons with disabilities at the polling unit will not get to them.
Yeah.
So that is one angle. And on the issue of data, that data is also very, very important. We demand that in their whenever there is a window for registration, they should make sure that they put all the modalities on ground for persons with disabilities to be captured. Let's know where they are. And again, there's this form that INEC, because most organizations of persons with disabilities, South Africa and several other organizations, have also raised these issues, and they came up with Form EC30, EC30H, but it's still not being deployed. I've voted several, and nobody have ever given me that form. I'm very sure that I'm not captured as a person with disability in INEC register. It's not there, but I'm actually a person with disability. So the number they released the other time are the population of persons with disability who actually registered. When you look at it, you'll be wondering, does it now mean that persons with disabilities have not been registering for voting?
Or they are not even interested in voting?
Interested. They are, but a lot of us who registered in 2011, we are not captured as persons with disabilities. Okay. So the ad hoc staff should try as much as they can to deploy that from ECH for the EC30H. They must deploy it, and again, let also, because we are in the world of internet now, people like my brother Chike, movement is always a problem. So they should be able to do that within their homes, open up their laptops and be able to do the necessary things, get themselves captured as persons with disabilities, also put out their own needs, because every disability have their own peculiar needs. So they also put out their own needs so that they will know what they need at the polling units. If it's about access, they will know that at that particular polling unit, it's all about making sure that the ballot boxes are kept in a place that he will be able to vote. If it's those that need magnified glasses, they will identify it there. So these are some of the things that they need to do, and they need to do it fast.
Okay,
we will not come back and continue to complain.
Okay, let's hear from Dr.
Each time
Chike.
it's so.
I think Chris has said it all. I'll just add that at our last advocacy meeting, we are pleading that I don't know how we're going to start it, but I think the federal whether it should be an executive bill this time around, proposing that INEC has a director. What do we call it? We should have an INEC commissioner for
Yes, the way they have commissioner
because
for
when you have
gender,
a national commissioner for disabilities, it will cascade to state commissioners for, in the INEC. We need to be in that room when they are discussing disabilities. Lumping us under gender and all other thing does not work.
Okay.
The law itself says at least 5% of employment should be for persons with disabilities. So it is another advocacy that we're going to start carrying out. We must have INEC commissioners for disabilities so that we will be in the room when they are discussing us. It's very important. And I recall that Chris and I too had talked about, even during elections, this registration thing that he mentioned. Before INEC will start going out of this thing that they have not consulted us.
Serious.
So we don't even know what the registration is going to happen in August. It's not late yet, but we should engage with INEC, and I hope they are listening. Let them invite us, PWDs, OPDs, organizations of persons with disabilities. Let's sit down with them so that we can advise them on how to capture us. Now, let me tell you one good thing. Majority of us in the disability community have phones. And because we have phones, it means we have BVNs and we have NINs. Can we connect, or use online processes so that once you generate your NIN, it will tell them the system. The system will tell you that we're PWDs. At least you will know that this person is not faking, or this person is not, that this person is real. And then in their forms, make it such that you can even use USSD codes to capture those who cannot use internet. So you dial a certain number, we are ready to support INET to do all that. You tell them how to go about it. You dial a certain number, call in, and you can register even via voice IVR, interactive voice recognition and registration. So that way you make this, because when you tell us to come to a point and come and register there, Chris said it succinctly. Many of us have challenges. We cannot come out. Even the cost of transportation to get to the polling unit. Mm-hmm. We advocated that at some point for us to come out en masse to vote, we need to be able to arrange for people for vehicles to go to their houses, pick them, and then bring them to the polling unit and take them back. The question then was, who was going to bear the cost? And Chris and I approached INEC. We met with the commissioner in charge at that time, and he said, INEC cannot afford some of these things, that we should go and look for a way around it. But if we were on the table discussing as commissioners, we have PWDs who have capacity to be commissioners. So we can do that, and it's important that we begin to advocate for that. We have to be in the room when they are discussing about us. Yes.
And again, before you take it up, it's also very important that INEC build collaboration with the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities. Mm-hmm. That collaboration will go a long way, because whatever INEC is doing has to also be in tandem with
Accessibility
our
standards.
yes, those accessibility standards, so that they will use it to work to make sure that all polling units are accessible. Then making use of buildings that are actually accessible
Yes.
as their polling units, not using places that's not really accessible. Like you mentioned, gutters. Many places you see they put it as gutters, you cannot even cross over. So these are some of the things that they should avoid. We don't want people to be always saying hey yeah to us whenever we come out to exercise our right.
And talking about please a round of applause for Radio Nigeria. This is I had a seamless entry.
Okay, coming in. Yes,
so
we
please, I
actually.
think we have to give a round of applause.
Thank
You guys have really
It's better than the other time.
Yes,
Thank you
we
very much.
actually did some research.
So I next should come here and learn from
Yes,
you.
and other organizations.
They go learn, but not the hard way.
Yes, definitely. All right, we have just about 5 minutes to call this a wrap. As usual, we like to give you an information on what to know about the 2018 Disability Act. Now, the National Commission for Persons with Disabilities, NCPWD, is an establishment of the federal government of Nigeria under Section 31 of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Act 2018. The act was signed into law on the 7th of January 2019 by the late President Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR, former President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, the Act empowers the Commission to promote, protect, and prioritize the rights of persons with disabilities and further enhance their productivity through education, health, and other social-economic activities of the state. The National Commission for Persons with Disabilities is an agency under the provision of the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Poverty Reduction, and headed by Professor Netanyahu Iwada. Now, the office of the Executive Secretary of the Chief Executive Officer and Head of Agency, Dr. Ayuba Gufwan, of the new Executive Secretary of the Commission. Well, that's what to know about the Disability Act. Would have loved to give the Star of the Week. All right, stay with us as we come up with our Star of the Week.
No calls.
I think even online you're having some network hitch, so it actually disrupts communication.
We need to keep pushing this.
Yes,
You know, there's a house hearing. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Oh, Chris. On Monday.
Okay.
Public hearing.
On
The constitutional amendment.
okay.
Nigeria's foremost disability inclusion magazine. Chris has built a
You know, another thing is just that even on this session 54, we need to have an independent auditor. Yes, that's a monitoring mechanism of the compliance.
Yes.
So it's also another way for us to achieve it. If we don't do that, it will still be the same story. Well, must acknowledge that they are doing something.
They're doing. Yeah.
Today, he also served as FCT chairman of the National
It's an
Association
ongoing process anyway.
for Disabilities, where his leadership continues to open doors and minds.
That is your light,
Him is another
not the
powerful
studio light.
Dr.
Because
Chike,
the studio is over.
spinal cord injury survivor from a tragic car crash in
It's
2006.
not as bright as this.
Dr. Chike turned a life-altering experience into a life
It's like to make it brighter.
with unmatched passion and intellect. He has become one of Nigeria's most vocal and visionary disability rights advocates. In 2014, he founded the Center for
No network.
Rehabilitation and
At all.
Empowerment, an organization that is creating real opportunities and empowering persons with disabilities nationwide. From consulting with governments and international bodies to innovating across media, entertainment, and leadership spaces, Dr. Chike's impact is wide and deep. Oh,
How long
to
is it?
mention,
it will wrap up in about 3 minutes.
Oh,
Well, we are actually done. I mean, once you come back now, that's the end of the program. Maybe a minute to just say some few words.
we raise our voices to celebrate Chris Agbo and Dr. Chike Okogwu,
two phenomenal leaders who continue to champion inclusion, push boundaries, and remind us all that disability is not inability. They are our stars of the
Is this a
That's it for me. My name is Lucky.
You came in, no?
Back to the rest of the program.
All right, many thanks, Mr. Lucky. I want to give a special shout out to Gloria Ofodile. We will see you on our Facebook. Thank you so much for always, viewing our lives. Now we have about 2 minutes to wrap up the program. I would have loved to entertain our guests once more, to say some final words, especially for INEC and the disability community. But of course, we're already out of time. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today and for all of your contributions during the program. You want to say something?
Yes,
Okay.
until the first mile to the last mile.
Okay.
Until the first mile to the last mile ends in a smile for a person with disability, our job is not done.
All right.
And keep up the good job.
Thank you.
All I have to say is that disability rights, they are human rights. Please let all of us work together to uphold the rights of persons with disabilities.
Thank you so much. And this is where we'll call it a wrap on today's edition of the program. For more information on the activities of TAF Africa, visit our website at www.tafafrica.co. You can also send a message to 703